Dear Legislator Santulli, I'm writing with regard to the Tuesday agenda of the Multi-Services Committee. I understand that you have submitted a memorializing resolution in support of my legislation A1305. I'd like to provide some clarification about what this legislation is and what does not in order to clear up any misconceptions. Origin of the bill. This bill was drafted after news accounts broke of private school parents who filed lawsuits regarding the quality of education their children received at certain private schools. As you know, New York State has a law that requires education in private schools to be substantially equivalent to education in the public schools. The rationale for this long-existing law works in tandem with our compulsory education requirement. New York has a compulsory education law in order to ensure every child receives a sound, basic education necessary to function in our modern society. This inalienable right for every child is predicated on the premise that an educated populace is sacrosanct. This law would be meaningless, however, if there was not some standard to ensure that children who are not in our public schools are getting an adequate education. Therefore, no matter where a child goes to school, public, private, religious, or homeschooled, the education must be substantially equivalent to the public schools. Unfortunately, the law lacks guidance on curriculum evaluation or enforcement. No parent should have to resort to a lawsuit in order to ensure their children are educated. Irrespective of the specific facts of that lawsuit, I believe it is necessary to clarify what substantially equivalent means in order to provide clear guidance in New York State. What the bill does. A1305 would codify that substantially equivalent refers to the subject matter, time allotment, and rigor. These three simple concepts would provide guidance regarding the adequacy of a curriculum. Subject matter. There are generally accepted subjects that a student should learn for preparation in our modern economy. Every school should be teaching these subjects, and they should be identified by educational experts in our state. Time allotment. In order to ensure every student is able to master these subjects, it is important that there be a generally accepted amount of time spent on learning. It would be inappropriate for some students to get a couple of hours of arithmetic a day while others only got a few minutes. Rigor. Some standard of rigor is necessary to ensure the subjects that are mastered and the skills obtained. Without a baseline of rigor, there can be no guarantee that a student leaves school with the skill set necessary to compete in the job market and economy. What the bill does not do. This bill and the Education Commissioner Elliott's recent attempts to enforce the law does not suggest that every private school is providing a substandard education. There are plenty of private schools, religious and non-sectarian, that provide an excellent education for students. That does not mean we should not attempt to clarify our laws and ensure 100% compliance. Whether 10 children or 10,000 children are receiving a substandard education is not the issue. Any child not properly educated is a failure of our American educational system. The critics of this bill and the Commissioner's enforcement efforts usually state their unwavering support for private or religious schooling and reject any policy that seeks to provide oversight. They also give anecdotal examples of successful students who went through private schools or religious schools. These arguments are irrelevant. I repeat, an overwhelming majority of private schools and religious schools provide an excellent education. However, some do not. The rights of those students are being violated. We should always strive to ensure no child falls through the cracks. I respectfully ask that you support this resolution and any efforts to ensure the proper education of our students in all schools at all levels. This principle is not limited to private schools. As you may know, I've spent the last several years fighting for statewide full-day kindergarten. I am sure many students came out of that half-day program and succeeded. However, it is fundamentally unfair for students in one district to get half the instruction time of students in another district. This year I was successful in passing a full-day kindergarten incentive bill that will correct this inequity. Education is the great equalizer, and as government officials, we have a duty to ensure our laws and guidelines protect every child. Sincerely, Kevin Zebrowski.